And welcome aboard. I'm not using the typical student of the game thing or any of that, but you do still see the student of the game thing in the background. But this is a different thing altogether. One might say you're even feasting here. Yes. No, I'm not referring to how much of a snack my co-host is, but of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game, and my good friend Tokeo Jamison, Big TJ here aboard. Not as Big TJ, I should say. But yeah, you remember us from such films as, but you may remember us from such podcasts as Dinner Time, my occasional appearance on his smoke show, and also a few of our episodes earlier in this rendition of the student of the game where we were talking about some basketball and how certain Marvel superhero characters, some DC as well, fit in what sport they should play and all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, here we are now in this particular instance, and we'll be talking on behalf of Team MBS Media. Now, NBS used to be Nuts and Bolts Sports. They kept the NBS. Listen, I'm not here to do the marketeering. That is my dude, Joe Cardozo's job. But we are here tonight to talk a bit about the latest Chris Rock special. And what got my attention on this, TJ, is even my closest people who are too, too paranoid or too scared to podcast in general. I'm not going to say his name. Shots are fired if you're listening to this. But they said that this Chris Rock special didn't hit the same way. And I don't know if you heard anything similar about that, TJ. You heard stuff like that?
I'm not gonna say that I heard that it didn't hit the same. I mean, there's now what's become the thing is a comedy special comes out and it's extremely polarizing one way or the other. And there's usually some outrage. So there's been hate, to the point to where they say it doesn't hit the same. To me, because all I can give is my opinion, I'm saying Chris has aged and his material and his delivery has aged with him. So just the clips that I've seen, and I know we're going to get into it, just he's matured. Not to say it's funnier or less funny than what he was doing when he was doing Bigger and Blacker, but it's just his delivery has changed, and I'm for it.
His delivery has changed. Society has changed. Like, we all know a very key and important element of his stand-up in the past has been, of course, to comment on racial things in society, stuff like that. And is that all about it being all white? It's all right. That's only part of it. He too, and this is what I appreciate about Chris Rock, was that he too would turn the mirror on his own community, right? We all know these black people and these word I can't even say anymore because it's 2023. Not that I ever would say it. That's a whole other question. But that's
I don't think you ever would, sir.
No, God, yeah, that's a good way to get punched or shot. Or something bad will happen. I don't care if I'm invited to the barbecue or not. I'm going to keep it that way. You get this.
Karma would happen. Yeah.
I mean, well, we'll leave it at that. I was about to say something about karma being a bitch, but now then it would just get difficult. Anyways, but
right.
To your point, yes, the performer has changed, and one could argue every time a performer changes, or takes the stage, they're a different entity. But now it's been long enough that society as a whole is different. I mean, we could go on and have a longer episode about Dave Chappelle and all that whole thing. Like, I'll put it this way. It's very appropriate, and I want to make sure I get it right, so I'm going to look on my note over here. It's very appropriate that Chris Rock's special is called Selective Outrage. So, over and above that, you expect some of the differences there. And of course, if you don't expect something to come up about Will Smith, you're nuts. Not only is that a good marketing idea, I feel like that opportunity for any performer, you could not just pass that up unless, well, I have thoughts that I'm going to save for after we consume the show. So when we come back, both me, myself, Kyle Nash, the student of the game, and my good friend, Tokeo Jamison, would have partaken of Chris Rock's Selective Outrage. And we will let you know how we feel there. Final thoughts before we get on there, TJ.
Before we get on there, man, I think that we will be remiss in doing the fans a disservice if we did not, because neither one of us have seen it yet.
Right.
I feel like we should give any possible expectations for what we're getting ready to go into before we watch it, and then obviously getting the opportunity to recap. And I'll go ahead and go first.
Please.
You mentioned Will Smith, and obviously, it was speculated that he wasn't going to say anything about it until he was ready. And when the report came out, okay, he's ready. He's going to talk about it in his live Netflix special. I love the marketing on that, but I also want to say something to anyone out there who is upset or says or throws hate at Chris to say, why are you still dragging this on? Let's acknowledge the fact that he was the person that received this slap, and he himself did not say anything about it. Everyone else did. So if you're tired of hearing about it, you're not tired of Chris talking about it. You're tired of hearing about it from everybody else. So don't throw hate at him because he's finally addressing something that he should be able to address. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
And I'll definitely be ready to build on that concept. I don't want to bring on the other aspect I want to add to that, but I have made a note here. Being a true accomplished host, just like you are an accomplished thespian whose face is on a god dang billboard, but
thank you, sir.
You know, playing Max, right? Anyways,
Max, yes, Max Detweiler. I got some clips for you, by the way, because I told you I knew since you weren't going to be able to see it, I wanted to get some stuff. I got some stuff for you, man.
Oh man, I'm excited about that. Just like I'm excited about watching Chris Rock's Selective Outrage with you right now. All right, so we're back. We have time traveled into the future where I myself and TJ have experienced the Selective Outrage from Chris Rock. Not to say he was expressing Selective Outrage. That's the name of the special. But so I'll say this to lead it off before we really get to break it down. And then you can tell me. I kind of get it. I kind of get where some people would not think that it's, quote, as funny, or that there were times where he was kind of stale, air quotes. Not so much because, of his age or anything like that. Hell, dude get pretty goddamn current, in my opinion, right? Not too many references to, In Living Color here, for example, right? That's a 90s thing. This was a comedy show that mommies and daddies used to watch on Fox before it was crazy with Republicans in a way that was disruptive, and had somebody called James Carey, who was the only white guy, ironically, was somebody who was nicknamed Ivory. Anyway, so Keenan, right? Keenan Ivory Wayans, right? And no one,
Ivory Wayans, 100%.
The only one talking about that irony. Anyways, ain't nobody calling him Jim Ebony Carey. That's all I'm saying. No. Anyways, alrighty then. So that dynamite lead in. But
I'll take it.
Yeah, right. Nothing like that going on with his references. But the part I think people will dock him on is him making references and statements that have already been done. Oh, look, comedian of a certain age criticizing people for putting stuff on the social media that no one gives a damn about. Ooh, there's a shocker, So there were some of those moments where I feel like that was coming. But there was a lot here that was clever, in my opinion. No one here's going to say, no one's here going to say he's a bad comedian. I'm not dissing Chris Rock. I don't need another comedian mad at me. No. Right. We'll get to that, more on that later. But listen, the special was strong. Was it bigger and blacker? No. But that's the problem when you're a guy that's been at it for a while and you come out of everywhere. Unless you come out like Chappelle and are trying to be the next Cosby and a social icon of color, which technically Dave's not trying to do that. That just kind of happens. But, the bar is high, and maybe he didn't quite make it to one of his other specials or any of that, but this was a fine special. I'm glad to have had the Netflix subscription to have partaken of it. I don't feel like it's a waste of time. I would have watched it all the way through on my own, even if I was doing it for a show or not. There are some comedy specials where I'm like, no, I'm done. There's some things. And I think here's the other thing too. Chris Rock has this unique talent of turning the perspective on everybody in the room. Like in the day, and I forget which special it was, when he did the whole, what's his word? Bit, if you will, about if it's all right, it's all right.
Right.
There was some nuance there that was left out, but I understood A, he was making a social statement even at that age, and B, I did laugh at some of that ish. So that's important. But I think there's some places he goes where people aren't ready to be targeted by the criticism, in that same way. So with that kind of combination of the things that have been kind of done before in some cases, like, oh look, talking about Beyonce being fly, that's so new, you know. Talking about not getting other rappers mad at you, that's new. But and kind of the third aspect for me is there were elements of this that weren't a comedy show, Tokyo Jamison. They were, in fact, public therapy sessions. Let's be clear. This dude was getting some raunchiness out of his soul and was doing it in an art form and a passion and in a way that he would do as a performer. So I think it was a good special. People who were saying it just wasn't good. It was different. I'm not here to say it was bad or worse or anything like that, but I can see there are the elements where I'm like, that's why so-and-so thought it was bad, right? What about you? What did you think?
So you just unpacked a lot, and I appreciate you for it, because as the host of this shindig, you have to give like that monologue. Like I feel like it's necessary.
Well,
you're Conan, and I'm the other guy.
First of all, let me be clear, you son of a bitch. You already outrank me. You don't have to make it clear that you're Andy Rickner and I'm a talentless Irish dude, okay? I said it. I said it. No, I don't need another comedian mad at me. I'm just joking.
Right. All right. So look, before I get started, thank you for having me. I am Tokeo Ornee Jamison, and this everything that I have to say is brought to you by Bush Bavaria. Taste the cold fluids from Germany. Bush Bavaria. So
he gets a haircut, and now he has to refer himself to Thierry Henry. Interesting.
Thank you for that.
Sports!
So if I'm looking at it, what I feel like we are guilty of this as a society. We like to compare. Mm-hmm. It's movies, it's originals to sequels, it's reboots to original series. Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland. Who do you love?
Excuse me. You're the only person that thought reboots were a good idea here. I wasn't willing to compare them, but we won't be coming to America on that topic in this pod. Anyway,
we're definitely not coming to America on anything, brother. That's not happening.
I sold. Anyway.
But it is our desire to compare. So I look at, and I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone because I choose to look at it this way, but I look at comedy specials as individual events.
Sure.
I can't compare it to Bigger Blacker because Bigger Blacker was its own thing, and you have to also take into account. And I'm not saying that this is. I'm not apologizing for society at the time. It was what it was. Right. But there was a lot of humor that was you could say things in Bigger Blacker that you don't hear now. So the comedy was different, and you got away with some stuff that you can't get away with now without risk of being canceled, which he talked about in the show. The reason that I feel like, and I'm listening to it and you heard me, I'm laughing, and I want to say that this was an absolute fun experience. I will be down to do this with you on any show, bro. Like, it was great to be able to, it's like we're sitting in the same room. I loved it.
I mean, is Cat Williams going to drop one soon? I'm down. Let's do
it. He did one like in the third or fourth quarter of last year. He's got a fairly new one out right now too. But nonetheless,
I need to catch up on that. Continue.
Right. I haven't seen it either, but still, there you go. Plug. Is the reason I feel like I'm watching it, I'm laughing, and I'm seeing immediately why I feel like people would be upset with it. Yeah. And it's what Chris Rock does, which is holding that mirror up.
Yep.
And showing you the ugly. But he's using humor to lay it out. But what he is saying is absolutely true. The message he is delivering is 100% true. And people don't always like to be told about themselves. We like to talk about others and what other people are doing and how other people's choices are horrible. And we like to watch reality shows so we can look at someone else making choices that we wouldn't make, even though in reality we make a lot of those choices. But because nobody's watching, it's okay.
Yeah.
We can judge others and don't want to be judged. And what Chris Rock is, he held that mirror up. This is what we're doing.
Right. And like we let in the intro, this is what he does. And it's kind of a thing. And to your point, this is part of that society changing. Like to this day, by the way, and we can have a sidebar conversation on this if you want, but I don't get, I'm still trying to solve for and figure out, as literally the whitest dudes to spin jokes and attempt to say controversial ish and get away with it that I know. Bill Burr. How does he do it? How does he do it?
You know. I watched one of his clips today, and it was quite clever. But I agreed with what he was saying. But the way that he said it, some of the words, it kind of caught me. I was like, shit. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, and I'm not that person to play the victim to say, oh, I felt some kind of way. Everybody should team up with me and let's go after Bill Burr. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just acknowledging, okay, while the joke landed with me because I laughed, some of the way that he delivered some of the joke, it caught me.
Right. I mean, it's up there with somebody saying to you, thugs don't write columns when they're trying to clarify a point about social standing. I get that. Not that I'm mentioning any particular individual or episode in question, but the punchline's this. But I think that's kind of what's different with Bill Burr and Chris Rock is that Bill Burr eventually gets to a place where you might agree. If you don't agree with Chris Rock, I doubt he gives a damn. You know, like you still laugh. I'll do it's kind of a mixture of Charlie Sheen when he was doing his stage thing for a while and Chris Rock. What did he say to the one guy who requested the refund when he was on the stage? Dude, I already got your money. Winning, right? So you like that mashup? Did that work?
I did that.
But like that's his style. And listen, even watching the intro, I'm picking up right away. And I'm sure you did too, with a thespian of your caliber, you know, with all the clips from the stuff we knew about, even some of the things I forgot about. Like, you know, the first thing he does is he shows a close up, which I never wanted to see this much of Chris Rock's chest, to his point, but but I see a medal with Prince's symbol.
Yeah.
He's telling you he's of a particular time. He's telling you, like, there's clips from his old specials. I was provocative. I don't know why I feel like I have to do an impression of Chris Rock for this part, but
I think you like it.
It is fun as hell. That's not wrong. But I think the reason why my mind does this is I'm hearing him talk to me this way. So I'm expressing that as best I can to the viewer. But like, as we get these clips, I'm a guy who was doing stuff. I'm over here in the 90s. Oh, kicking ass, taking names, making millions of dollars. And I was doing all this, and now I'm about to tell y'all fools what's what, because I got slapped in the face, you know. And yeah, marketing, what? You pay me? I already got your money. Winning. which part of the winning speech where he tells us to the exact degree that his daughters are spoiled, using a phrase that I can't repeat without saying, well, only by saying touche. That's how I'll say it.
So if I can, because you mentioned the Prince reference.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to get lost, not to take away from your interpretation.
Oh no, I'm sure there's more. And if you saw it and know it, drop it, please.
100%. So to give the viewer just a little bit of history, if you don't know, the reason that Prince changed and went by the symbol as opposed to Prince is because, he went by the artist, and the symbol is what represented the artist. The reason he started going by the artist is because in contracts, they don't refer to him as Prince. They refer to him as the artist. And they had, it said like they own rights in perpetuity for a lifetime and all the universe and all that stuff. So Prince was, he changed himself, the way he was referred to as the artist based on the way the contracts were written. He was looking out for his number one, which is why he owns, past tense, the rights to all of his stuff. So whenever I see Chris put on that necklace, while it is homage to Prince, I think he's wearing that medallion of being the artist and even referring to himself during the show as an artist.
Right, you are. Yeah, no, great drop there. Yeah, I didn't. When you mentioned the part about the artist, I'm like, that's what it is too. Because like he said in the show, I do my homework, I do my research.
My research.
Yeah, and listen, does it take a rocket scientist to figure out why he did the show in Baltimore? I don't think so. But I whatever. Anyways,
It's close to Philly.
it is close to Philly, also close to DC. I don't know. Anyway, but it's close to Philly. He can't do that show in Philly. He ain't trying to get another rapper mad at him.
That's why I said close to. It's Philly adjacent.
Jason, it's another P adjacent that it talks about. More on that later in the show, Tokeo Jamison. Yeah, no, but and he comes out the gate swinging with the whole explanation of selective outrage. And this is the part that I don't want to say is tired, but we've heard versions of before. But for the people in the demographic that know of and enjoy Chris Rock, we want his take on this. And all the people that aren't in our demographic are going to sit to the end anyway to get to the part that they all want to hear about. Yes. Right. And to his credit, there were a few times I'm thinking, oh, is he going to pull it out now? Oh, is he going to pull it out now? No, not yet. You may, I don't want to feel, I don't want to act like I'm trying to steal his method, but I don't want to get another comedian mad at me. But yeah, you see how I'm sprinkling it through. I'm doing that to kind of capture what he did, eventually getting to the slap. Yes, it comes up at the end.
That goes to this man's genius. Mm-hmm. Because having had a failed attempt at stand-up, and then having a good rapport with our friend Joey Harris, who was a stand-up comedian, knowing what goes into writing a set, for him to write a set that perfectly sprinkles it in enough to keep your tip wet. You wanted it. You knew why you were there. He said he was not going to talk about the slap until he was ready. So we've been waiting a year to get this man's take on being slapped in front of the world and not doing anything in the moment except for his damn job.
Right. But I'll see that and raise you this, Tokeo Jamison. The selective outrage is obviously what that selective outrage, not just societies, but he builds it in there to kind of explain not just his thoughts on what happened, but to actually show some insight. Okay, society, here's why you created the slap. And really, for those, I won't do the spoiler part yet, but like throughout, he's going through the different factors. And I wrote down elements of this too, so I'm going to be kind of thumbing through my notes while I say it. But like, he starts with all the cancel culture stuff.
Right.
And you can't say anything without offending somebody. Seems really appropriate to in reference to the slap rather. He's talking about women having the power versus men having the power. An interesting insight on what do you think actually occurred with the snap. Talks about attention and the desperation to have it. The best ways to get attention, and I quote, are to show your ass. Do something infamous. Do something excellent. And claim to be a victim. Thank you for counting me off, Tokeo Jamison. All things that could be associated in around to the eventual occurrence of what he blames, and many other people do too, as the slap. If you and I, by the way, were still doing a show regularly, I feel like I would have made a couple of these points. And God bless him for confirming me, because my fragile ego loves that shit. So, yeah, it just, there was one thing I wanted to point out, is two things in particular. And this part didn't kind of fit in with the overall theme of the show, in my opinion, but there was still some good things done. And I'm referencing, by the way, Tokeo Jamison and I have performed many times on another show called Required Viewing that's on the Hilarity by Default YouTube channel.
Check it out.
There's a particular episode that wasn't released, but Tokeo Jamison, I think you remember the point I made about in Harlem Nights. I can only remember her name is Whitley from A Different World. Yasmin Guy. Gath. That's I was saying Bleeth. I'm like, I know that's not right. Um,
Jasmine Guy, yeah.
but yeah, Yasmin Guy um is particularly fair complected for a woman of color.
Mm.
And she's working with the white gangsters. Whereas Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, you know, Red Fox, all of the well-known talent that's the air quotes good guys are particularly dark. Like the only exception really is our Arsenio and some of those cruel Tommy from Martin, all those guys, you know, they're the one kind of exception to it. But so the point he made about Meghan Markle bringing up how brown the child might be, and like, that's not racist. You know who else would ask that question? Black people. When he said that, I thought of, and you might have seen my face when we were watching the show together. Like, I thought of that instantly. So, by the way, shouts to Demos for us finding a way to sprinkle in some hilarity by default marketeering in here. It's not as bold as a slap from a famous rapper, but I'm not trying to get any comedians mad at me.
Not at all. I so that particular set, I laughed at because all right, you were pointing out the breakdown and the buildup of selective outrage and how he talks about cancel culture and the four things of women having the power and all that leads to the crescendo, that is, what the situation was. So
Mhm.
all this stuff leads into this. So okay, like yeah, again, I'm taking this quick moment to praise the genius. You don't have to laugh at every single thing for it to be a successful comedy special. This man did two things simultaneously.
Mhm.
One, excuse me, scratch that. Three things. He showed plain out what's going on in society, which a lot, like as Kyle said, a lot of people are doing right now. He did that. Two, he showed you that you are no different than Will Smith. While you may judge him for what he did, you have selective outrage as well. While it may show itself differently, but you are no different. No sin is greater than the other. So he's doing these two things, and then I mean, it's just I am impressed with the layout because he's showing again everything that happened to lead to the slap, what we're doing, and then boom, he lays it all to you at the end on a plate. It's
And by the
all
way,
here.
as a quick aside, I think everybody needs to know this too. This is basically an instant reaction. So we are going to probably miss some stuff. So
one Hundred
anything
percent.
you want to sprinkle in and add in, please throw into whatever any sort of comments or anything you want, or tweet at me at the SOTG. And more than happy to explore any of that with you. And yeah. So please, if you have any other depth that you want to bring out here, I'm not going to try to make this like a whole Joe Rogan experience where like I spend an hour and a half with Andy Schultz breaking down freaking genius about how stand-ups do things. Like this isn't that. But what I am trying to figure out is, or what we are exploring, I think, is whether or not he's lost his touch here. And you clearly are saying, child, please.
It would be doing a disservice
Mm-hmm.
to performers to say that someone who has taken from bits and pieces of his work and is showing the evolution of it, that's like hating on Will Smith because he started off with if you look at Will Smith's acting in Independence Day, the movie itself, Independence Day, was great, but you wouldn't look at Will Smith's acting in Independence Day and say that guy's going to win an Oscar one day.
Right. It's
You
not that he
can't.
was bad in it, but he
It's
wasn't.
not that he was bad in it.
He
It's
wouldn't have
just
his
I'm not
billboard necessarily. Right out.
100%, 100%. But if you look at him now with the work that he's done, because he's taking bits and pieces from every role that he's done, and he's worked on his craft. Now you look at him and you say that man, depending on the role, could be an Oscar nominee if he were eligible. So Chris Rock, I'm saying, has he's matured. So if you are a young viewer that is not familiar or doesn't have, I'm not saying that his comedy is for a person of a certain age, because young people can appreciate it because the message is directed to everybody.
Correct.
But I just have a hard time with someone seeing that and not being able to appreciate. Everybody's got their own perceptions, but it's just, how can you look at that and not laugh a little bit? I mean, like, everything is not that serious, but what he's talking about, we are guilty of,
So we're back to that it being uncomfortable thing, right?
and that's what it is. When you're putting out something that makes people don't like to look at the negative that they do. They don't want to be called to the woodshed because we like that we have the four walls. We can say what we want on our phones, but we still have the four walls of privacy to be able to do what we don't want in the dark. Chris Rock is just turned the lights on. And yes, he is repeating things that other people have said, but here's the thing. There aren't a lot of fresh takes. All right, there aren't a lot of fresh takes, but there is potential for fresh delivery. And I feel like Chris Rock did a good job with his delivery of the information because there's so much that you can't say. Dave Chappelle just did a phenomenal job last year with the comedy special, and he got ripped for it.
Incorrectly too, but that could be a separate podcast.
And then you have another comedy special that came out last year by Jared Carmichael. I think it's called Ray Daniel, where this man used his comedy special as an opportunity to come out as a gay man. And people looked at that and said that that was less of a comedy special as it was a therapy session for him to be able to use that platform to come out and speak on it. It's comedy is not just someone standing at a microphone and telling jokes to make you laugh. I feel like they're supposed to make you think. They're supposed to make you uncomfortable because they're pointing a light at what we do, and it's funny.
It starts with feeling, no question.
100%. There has to be emotion. Otherwise, I don't feel like we laugh. And some of the stuff that I laughed at most was the stuff that I identified with. When he started talking about, and I don't know if we can curse on here. I'm trying to keep it clean. I don't know where we're at. But when he's talking about 45, 50-year-old pussy, I identified with that.
I can't imagine why.
So I'm like, yo, I'm laughing at because everything he said, I'm like, that it hits because I experienced it. He is talking. He doesn't know me, but he is talking my life, baby, and that is what it's the emotions that he's drawing on. So that's why I say I'm a fan of it.
Listen, I'm married to a professional woman. You're damn straight. I understood what he was saying.
100%. 100%.
And there was another element too that I think, and the more actually, and I know why he brings up the royal family now and makes fun of them and brings them back down to earth. And then, you know, he goes in and talks about white people wanting to overthrow the government of that they run, which I know I'm not supposed to laugh at that as you know, the lighter hue on the show, but F you guys, it was funny.
That was funny.
But
that was funny.
I say that those are there, and I think you kind of took me here, and I'm buying it now. This thing that you helped me sell to myself. I don't know, dude. Oh wait, I already got some money. Yeah. No. So, but I think the reason why he does that and does the section about January 6th is to remind the world, as you eloquently put it, that Will Smith is just a dude that caught some breaks, much like Chris Rock himself is. I mean, the story behind him getting the role for Fresh Prince is him at a party. I know there's more details than that, but bleep you guys, at the end of the day, dude was at a party and read a script, you know? So that's a thing that happened. And I think by the way, the part that's getting me there too is he found a way, and this is deep. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but there's two things he did. I'm like, no. You did that on purpose, mofo. First of all, The first one is when he referred to the January 6 people climbing the gate as apes. Bro, there's some, you're feeling it too. Like, if your goofy behind tries to climb a gate and I say, Tokeo, Jamison, you look like an ape, someone's shooting. Okay? That's
Somebody's coming at you. That's being called a hate crime right there, bro.
You're not wrong. I might be charged a fine in England for that. That's a great,
100%.
Now, the other subtlety I thought he put in there that I'm going to point out, or else, my insides will explode. He makes the comments of and he talks about how accepting the Kardashians are, and then compares it to his family, and goes through the hypothetical space of if his dad became a woman, and now his brothers wouldn't be as accepting of it. He said that would be a testy Christmas. Bullshit. I know what you did there, and I don't know if we're allowed to curse, but I just did anyway. All right. I know what you did there, Chris Rock. If I knew your middle name, I'd say it right here too, but I'm not going to look it up right now because excellence takes a lot of work, and I don't want to get up that early in the morning.
We got Chris F. Rock, and it stands for Effin. Chris Effin Rock.
So, but anyways, now that I pointed those things out, let's go ahead and hit our crescendo here and talk about the section regarding the slap. First of all, I don't want to get any comedians mad at me here, but he finally lands the rapper reference he makes throughout. I don't want to get any rappers mad at me. Loved him doing that. We talked about that earlier. And the stuff about women having power and all that would really seem out of place until he got to the actual punchline. It said the stuff that I and other people did. This was not about Will Smith as a larger man slapping Chris Rock, a not larger man. This is about Jada making that larger man insecure in ways that nobody else did. You all have surely seen the TikTok / YouTube short / Facebook reel clip by now. I don't know if that's all of them, but deal with it. I'm 43. You got 3 of those major platforms. Just take that.
Right.
About the reference to the he never been interviewed by somebody who cheated on you. Like, that's real. I'm not going to say it how he says it. Watch special. And then you can tell us how wrong we are, and you can tweet at me at the SOTG. But the fact that he eventually does, spoiler alert, put it on Jada was gold. And the last thing he said about, I was taught not to fight in front of white people. I love the part that he did that too, because his earlier stuff was all about, in some cases rightly, in some cases, again, I didn't agree with everything he said, but in a humorous manner, referencing white people and their kind of their role in society and all that. I'm like, hey guy, hey TJ, a comedian made a reference about race. Cancel.
For shame.
Yes.
For shame.
Now you made me think of Game of Thrones. Shame.
Shame. Shame.
But,
throw feces at her.
But what say you of the climax there and the final breakdown of the slap as he did it?
So I will preface it by saying I saw this portion
right
before we watched it.
I saw a portion of the portion. I think there were things.
Yeah.
I think I saw the same reel / short / TikTok.
But I saw the actual live. So somebody had a cut of the actual live, 7 minutes and 38 seconds, where he's talking about it. There's stuff that they took out for what we just watched.
Oh.
I loved the way he did that. There's so many different ways that he could have talked about what happened last March. I love the way that he did it. We've already talked about the build-up. That was amazing. But to lay it down, and here's the thing. He said this, and I don't think enough people pay attention to it. I wouldn't talk about this shit, but they put it out there.
Yeah.
I'm not in the business of talking about anything that is not out there for public consumption. If y'all got marriage issues, I'm not out here talking about the dark details. I talked about being divorced, but I'm not talking about the dark details of my own marriage. So
Like,
I'm not going to talk about
right.
anybody's stuff that they didn't put out there themselves.
Correct.
So this man then goes and lays out everything that they are feeding people. And it in that moment that he's laying that out, I felt for Will Smith. That's going back to comedy is about emotion. It's not just humor.
Mm-hmm.
I felt for Will Smith in that moment because I'm sitting there listening to it. I'm like, man, if you have ever been the punchline for a whole bunch of people that do not know you, then you might not be able to get a grasp. But if you've ever been the victim of any type of canceling or any mass group of people that you don't know attacking you, when you think about the backlash that Will Smith had for staying with his wife after she did what she did, Chris Rock landed it. He was called a bitch by everybody. And Chris Rock was able to exercise those demons when he kept calling Will Smith a bitch. You heard it.
So
Every bitch got deeper. You know, and
no, I think all of them needed a scuba certification personally, but go ahead.
So in that moment, I felt for Will Smith. I'm like, you know what, man, he took a lot of heat.
I'd
And
do, yeah.
if you're a man, and again, talking about selective outrage, Will Smith could have been justified in getting upset at anybody. He chose the smallest person, which is in fact a bitch move. You know, so that
Laughing at the joke at first for those that don't remember.
right, and that's what I'm saying. The G.I. Jane joke, he was laughing at it first, and then he looks over, and then you see the aftermath.
Then you see Jada.
Right, and like I say, I'm not in the. I don't want to throw shame at her because ultimately I feel like everybody's got some trauma that they're dealing with. Everybody has something happen to them in their life that's got them a little janked up. It's a matter of how we handle it. I don't know what's going on in her personally to feel the need to do some of the things that she's done, but she's got her own journey to live. I'm just giving reaction to this comedy special. Chris Rock, in my opinion, did a 7-minute set as best as you could based on the situation. He remained on the high ground with how he said what he said.
Yeah, and he stayed there even though it's clear that he has pointed to Jada as the mastermind. Like, there's no mincing that, right?
He laid out all of it. Mm-hmm. There is no other, because everything. But here's the thing: we have to also acknowledge with the world that we live in now, everything is digitized. The internet does not lose. The internet keeps everything. So everything that he said can be fact checked. He gave the beginning of the issue, and the beginning of the issue is 100% on her. How the hell is she going to tell a grown man he needs to quit his job? She ain't in his checkbook. How's she going to tell him to quit his job? She can't do that. So him being a comedian uses his platform to create a joke on it because she spoke out on him first. Now, if so,
and this
X amount of years later,
reference, by the way, the whole concussion thing where she asked him to not do the Oscars because he was nominated. By the way, side note, he shouldn't have been nominated. I said it. Continue.
And I didn't see concussion. If I ever watch it, I'll give you my assessment on it. But I'm saying he laid it all out. What happened should not have happened. What happened last March shouldn't have happened. But I feel like we saw a breakdown on live TV. Mm-hmm. Everybody says, oh, a nervous breakdown. You just start mumbling gibberish and you start talking to yourself and you start breathing in a paper bag. No, breakdowns have many shapes. And I think we saw a breakdown where this man snapped. Right. All the emotions that he's feeling at that moment, he knows that the world is watching. He knows that he's up for an Oscar. He knows that his wife, while the joke was funny because he laughed, He knows that his wife feels some kind of way. We don't know what conversation they had before on the last commercial break. We don't know what conversation they had on the way to the event. We don't know what was going on with them. All we saw, I feel like we saw a breakdown in real time, and
Yeah.
it's not pretty.
No, God no. And I think at the end of the day, this is the other part of that uncomfortable is that we saw a therapy session, to make the other reference that you were talking about with the other show. We saw therapy out of Chris
Yeah,
Rock.
100%.
And you know, the say what you about the crafting of the stand-up in and of itself. At Days In, and I referenced Bill Burr, like this is the closest thing I could come up with. You know, you mentioned comparing, and this is what we do. I do it to speak a language that, in case people haven't seen this show, this is what you're looking for. And I know we may have air quotes spoiled some things. I don't know how you spoil a comedy show exactly, because to your point, unless you see the delivery, you don't know what the hell's going on. I could
Right.
do an impression, but I can't be bad. You know, and my impression may not be that good according to you. Hashtag you problem. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we saw three things. A, Chris Rock did have some stuff to say about society because he's a comedian. That's what they do. B, he had the opportunity to talk to his contemporaries that are his fans about some of these things, and then also spent time pointing them out to those that, if you're new to Chris Rock, I'm famous actor Chris Rock, or famous comedian Chris Rock. You may remember me from such movies as New Jack City, where I played Pokey. You know, yes, that's right. I managed to mash up Troy McClure from The Simpsons and Chris Rock. Talent. I'm not on a billboard. Anyways, so
R.I.P. Phil Hartman.
oh, now it's sad. Thank you.
That
Now that is sad though. Anyways,
is very
but,
pretty sad.
yeah. So with all of that in mind, he's doing that. He's doing those two things, and then lastly, listen, some of this is for him. That's why you have to pay to get the ticket, right? You know, so I think that was clear. You know, and those people who didn't think this special was as good, I think the only thing that I would see, I don't want to hold against people who didn't like it. The part, I'll put it this way, the part that it's easiest for me to let slide that somebody doesn't like is, oh, look, Facebook jokes. Those are so original, you know. But yeah, if you can't take this dude sharing his truth, then I just don't have the same taste in comedy as you, because he delivers it flawlessly.
So, I had a conversation with somebody today, a fellow actor, the young lady who played Maria in The Sound of Music most recently.
Oh, is that the one that's next to you on the billboard?
Yes. Since you got to call me out on it, yes.
For real, like the fact you were just matter of fact. There was no laughter. There was no. Well, yes, she
yes, yes, she is.
Shall we continue the podcast now? You arrogant beep. You know?
For like we talked, and I was sharing something with her. It's like I talk about perception,
mm-hmm.
and that is major when we're talking about viewing something like a comedy special. I was using the example of the word family. When you start a new job, when you're a part of a team, people like to use the word, "Oh, we're a family," and they say it because family is supposed to mean something universally to everybody. Close knit tribe, we look out for each other, etc. Some people who were raised in a less than awesome family might not get the same warm and fuzzies whenever they hear that word. So whenever they hear the word family, they get goosebumps. Their hair raises up because they didn't necessarily have the best experience. So I watch the same special that you did. We have different emotions that are going to be evoked, and I may like it versus you may liking it a little less than me. Doesn't mean that either one of us are wrong. So what I'm saying is I enjoyed it, and for anyone who didn't care for it, I feel for them. I feel for them because I felt like it was great delivery. It was Chris Rock. He wasn't trying to be anybody else. He was just showing again the maturity of his game and showing the seasoning to his craft. He's not Dave Chappelle. He is working on edging his face on the Rushmore of comedians. because I feel like if you're doing the same jokes, and I'm not saying this to knock any comedian, so please don't go. I don't want any comedians out here mad at me.
I don't need any more comedians mad at me.
But if, for example, Larry the Cable Guy was still doing get her done jokes, or Jeff Foxworthy was still doing the "Are you smarter than a fifth grader?" jokes, like or
you might be a redneck.
you might be a redneck. Even those guys, they
By the way, can we be clear on that? Like,
I mean, like how they're famous for it, but they evolve.
mm-hmm.
They evolve. If you were still doing the same thing, even if it's funny, I'm going to look at that comedian and say he's a one note comedian. Doesn't mean that it's bad because it can still be funny. But what are you bringing me? I'm a consumer. I need substance. I can eat a bologna sandwich, but that's not always going to fill me up.
I see what you did there. No, powerful stuff. Yeah, and it's those experiences, like you mentioned, right? Some people have experienced family. Some people, it's just a bold ideal, so they don't. I get you. And listen, I'm not really going to add anything else to that. I think we ended it up nicely. I think we analyzed this well. And the one thing you did get wrong, though, sir, is if your opinion doesn't match mine, you're obviously wrong because I'm a student of the game. It's obviously a joke, but I don't want any more comedians mad at me. Tokeo Jamison, can you please tell the world where you can be found?
If you want to find me, you're not going to find me on any milk cartons, and you're not going to find me on any billboards. Not anymore. It goes down tomorrow.
Well, I mean, but that's true. I mean, the production is over. They'll just have to wait for the next one or your next soccer match with that haircut. Anyway.
You and that beaver flip, go stop with your trash talk, man. I told you I had to do something completely different than Max, baby.
I know.
Max
I'm not mad at it. I just can tell very obviously that you refer to football as something where people can't use their hands. That's all I'm saying.
You a bastard. But no, if you want to hear more of my work, obviously you're going to be able to catch me with This Man, the Student of the Game, and also I will be working with the real Joey Harris. And you can find that at the real Joey Harris on Anchor, Spotify, and iTunes. We're doing a couple podcasts, and we'll be back on YouTube with what we're watching, finishing up The Sopranos real soon.
Nice. Yeah, no, you told me about that Sopranos action. That's toit. I have not checked out the full gamut of that yet, but when I do have some opportunity to get started with The Sopranos, I might go through the episodes along with you, gentlemen.
Well, I would say this, and I hope that you do it before then, but when you get to see, when you're on the flight to your next Super Bowl, you fancy bastard, then you can watch it on the flight. Because between the two of us, there's been one Super Bowl attended, and it wasn't by my stinking ass. Holla at your boy.
Well, I mean, nobody would know I was there. My face isn't on the billboard. But come at me. No. But that was funny. So yes, with all that in mind, regardless of if I'm attending Super Bowls or not, of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Check out my work on Facebook as the student of the game, where you'll see my many reels and writings surrounding the Orlando Guardians and many other things, sport, the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I do in connection with the 3-point conversion and A7 BN Sports. And of course, I cover a lot of UCF sports with my friends at the Black and Gold Banneret. So they have their weekly podcast, which is called Night Shift, the Night Shift podcast. Vox pulled their money, so we had to change the branding because business or something. Whatever, I'm not that bitter about it. That being said, you heard us reference also Hilarity by Default with my good friend Demosthenes Euclid. By the way, if I'm going to mention coverage of the Orlando Guardians, you have likely on Team MBS Media seen me and Jeff Barnes doing pregame and postgame from Camping World Stadium at Orlando Guardians games. So yeah, this is me, that guy, that stands next to Jeff wearing a tie. This
Perfect.
is a press event, so I do not go in full dressed garb. This is interesting. You talk so much smack on my hair. I didn't even go with the backwards cap this episode. So there you go. I dressed that up.
That's why I was able to acknowledge it, because I usually can't see it, so you're not able to do that beaver flip that you did. But again, I have to remind everybody that this was brought to you by Bush Bavaria. It's German and it's Schnitzel. Bush Bavaria.
And on that fine note from the people at Bush, this is Comcast Student Game. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.